My mom wants me to kick you out. You deserve it." That was the first thing my daughter-in-law said to me that Christmas Eve. Melissa's voice cut through the hallway like a cold wind off the lake. I was downstairs pulling a tray of cinnamon rolls out of the oven, Henry's favorite. I had made them every Christmas since the year we got married. Even after he passed, I kept the tradition. Not for me, for the family, for the house that used to feel like home. I turned slowly, clutching the edge of the counter as my knees reminded me that 72 is not 62 and certainly not 32. Melissa stood at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, not even bothering to hide her disgust. "Mama says you have overstayed your welcome," she added, stepping into the kitchen like it was hers. "She says you're a shadow in this house, and honestly, she's right. You're just here existing, and I'm tired of pretending that feels okay." I did not answer immediately. My eyes found the oven light flickering against the golden crust of the rolls. They smelled like comfort, like my husband's laughter, like the mornings I used to wake up to my son crawling into our bed, whispering, "Merry Christmas, Mama." But tonight, it just smelled like goodbye. I lifted my gaze to my son David, who stood behind her, not meeting my eyes. "David," I said softly, "do you agree with her?" There was a silence thicker than any snowstorm I had ever stood through. Then he sighed, shallow and guilty. "I think, maybe, it's time, Mom. You deserve some place of your own. Some peace." Peace. That word used to mean something. Now it just meant, go quietly. I wiped my hands on my apron. "All right," I said. Not a whisper, not a shout, just enough to let them know I heard them. Before we continue, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in Australia, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. I did not scream. I did not beg. But inside, something snapped, not with noise, but with clarity. They had long stopped speaking to me like family. But this was something altogether new, direct, shameless, final. "I'll pack my things after dinner," I said, still looking at David. "Do not worry, I won't get in your way." Melissa scoffed. "Dinner? You still think you're invited?" I turned off the oven, sliding the tray of cinnamon rolls to the side. "I made these for you," I said. Not to her, but to the room. "I thought you'd want them." David opened his mouth, then closed it. Melissa laughed. "Yeah, well, my mom's bringing creme brulee. Real dessert, modern, not these peasant spirals." They left after that. She, in her boots, clacking up the stairs like a victory march. He followed, still quiet, always quiet. The kitchen, once warm, seemed dimmer than before. I sat at the small table in the corner, the one they pushed against the wall when we had guests, so I would not be in the way. I looked at the rolls, still steaming, sweet and golden. I did not eat one. I thought about my husband, Henry, and the last thing he whispered in that hospital bed. "When they forget who you are, Ruth, you remember." So, I remembered. I remembered the mortgage I paid to help them buy this house. I remembered the years I watched over their daughter when they went on trips they never invited me to. I remembered the birthdays where I cooked, but was not in a single photo. I remembered the baby shower I paid for, the groceries, the bills, the rides, the nights, and now this. I stood, folded the towel over the tray, and carried it to the garbage. No one in this house needed what I had to give, but I still had more to give, somewhere else. I went to the room they let me call mine, barely big enough for a twin bed, no window, and no heat, unless the thermostat upstairs was kind. I pulled out my old suitcase, the one I had not touched since Henry's funeral. I folded my few good sweaters, tucked away my savings book, slid the photo of Henry from the dresser drawer, and packed the scarf I had knitted last winter but never wore. Before I zipped the case, I sat for a moment. Melissa's words echoed. "You're just here." But I was not just here. I was once everything, and perhaps, just perhaps, I still could be. I opened my old laptop, slow and yellowed with age, and booked a flight to Portland, Maine, not because I had friends there, not because I had plans, but because that was where I had once mattered, where I had once taught second grade in a room full of sticky fingers and wide eyes, where someone, maybe no one I knew anymore, might remember me not as an old burden, but as Mrs. Whitmore. And maybe, just maybe, I would remember myself too. I wrote a note. Short, simple, honest. Thank you for the years. I won't take any more than what I brought. I leave behind what you forgot. Your mother. Then I folded the cinnamon roll recipe written in Henry's handwriting and slipped it under David's door. Let him remember what love once tasted like, even if only when it is gone. I was not always someone they wanted out of the picture. I was once Mrs. Ruth Whitmore, second grade teacher at Piner Grove Elementary in Portland, Maine. My students used to leave notes on my desk written in crooked crayon letters that said things like, "You're the best," or "I want to be like you." I used to laugh, telling Henry that someday those kids would grow up and forget me. He would shake his head and say, "You'll be the kind of woman no one forgets, Ruth, even when they try to." When Henry died of cancer, I felt like my lungs forgot how to breathe. 38 years of marriage, and in the end, I had to hold his hand while machines beeped around us and nurses whispered code words I never wanted to understand. He told me in his last lucid moment, "Give David a good start. Then, if he forgets, you remember." So I sold our house, the one with the yellow shutters we painted together one summer, the lilac bushes he planted by the porch. I sold the dining table where we'd eaten every Sunday night and the piano I never learned to play right but played anyway. I sold the memories and gave the money to David and Melissa so they could buy a bigger house in the suburbs, a better school district, room for children, a future. They offered me the basement, and I took it. "Just until you're back on your feet," David said. I never told him my feet were just fine. I only wanted to stay close to help. At first, it felt like love. Melissa would smile and thank me when I made dinner. She let me take care of baby Chloe while they went to work. Sometimes I even got to tuck her in. But slowly, the thank yous stopped. The smiles faded. I became part of the furniture, useful, silent, and expected to stay in place. Melissa began enforcing rules. No walking upstairs during dinner hours. No inviting anyone over. No cooking past 7 p.m. "The smell lingers," she claimed. "You know, the baby needs routine," she said once when I asked if I could read Chloe a bedtime story again. "She's getting confused. Let me be the mother." So I became the ghost in the basement. I did laundry in silence. I reheated meals in the microwave so I would not take up stove space. I watched through the window as they celebrated birthdays and barbecues without me, even when I paid for the cake. One day, I overheard Melissa on the phone with her mother. Her voice carried through the floor vents. "She's still here," she said. I swear, she thinks she's part of this family just because she threw a little cash at our down payment. Her old house barely sold for $100,000. That would not even cover the fridge in this kitchen. Another time, she walked into the laundry room while I was folding Chloe's clothes. "Do not act like you are some kind of martyr," she snapped. "You live here for free. You do not pay rent, so stop acting like you are doing us a favor by breathing." I never raised my voice. I never called David to complain. I just kept doing what needed to be done. Grocery shopping, babysitting, paying for Chloe's music lessons when Melissa said they just could not swing it this month. Then came the Healthy Glow idea, Melissa's dream beauty brand. She needed a loan, and she needed my name. "I need a co-signer," she said over dinner one night, not looking up from her phone. "Just a formality. You will not even notice it. It is my business, my risk." I read the paperwork. They wanted to leverage the main house, the one I never let go of, the house Henry had renovated with his own hands, the house where we said our last goodbye. "I cannot," I said. "That house, it is all I have left of your father." Melissa slammed her fork down. "You mean all you have left?" God, Ruth, do you even care about our future, or are you going to hoard some moldy old shack in Portland while we build something real here? David did not say a word. He just rubbed his temple like I was a headache he could not wait to finish. That was the day she began to truly hate me, and I knew it. From then on, every glance, every word was laced with contempt. Then came the incident with the housekeeper, Maria, a kind woman in her 50s who came twice a week. One afternoon, Melissa accused her of stealing a pair of earrings. Maria cried, swore she would never do such a thing. I believed her. I told Melissa I believed her. "You are taking her side," she spat. "You are choosing a stranger over your own family." "I am choosing what is right," I said. She fired Maria that same day and told David I was becoming confused and difficult. He asked if I was getting enough sleep. I told him I slept just fine alone. The thing about being the quiet one in the house is that they forget you have ears. They forget you keep track, that you remember, that you still feel. And when someone pushes you far enough into a corner, sometimes the silence ends. That day on Christmas Eve, when Melissa finally said the words out loud, "My mom wants me to kick you out. You deserve it," I realized something terrible and freeing. They never loved me. They loved what I gave, and now that they thought I had nothing left to give, they were ready to sweep me away like a box of forgotten ornaments. But I was not empty. Not yet. Not ever. It was the second Sunday of December, the same Sunday every year. I always set aside that day for Henry. Not a big production, just a table, a candle, a framed photo, and the cinnamon rolls he used to sneak bites of before they cooled. This year, I laid it all out on the old wooden coffee table in the den, far from the pristine white marble counters Melissa loved so much. I lit a single candle. I whispered his name. I touched the photograph we had taken in 1984, just the two of us, standing outside the first house we ever bought, his arm around my shoulder, his smile crooked from laughing too hard at something I said. I had worn a blue sweater. He had worn a tie he hated. We looked like a couple who had weathered storms, not polished mannequins for a real estate magazine. We looked real. Then the door burst open. "What the hell is this?" Melissa's voice cracked through the room like lightning. She walked in fast, heels clacking, holding a glittering picture frame wrapped in silver ribbon. "I told you I had someone edit a new photo. I hired a professional. It's modern, clean, presentable. This," she gestured at the picture of Henry, "this looks like a brochure for depression." She marched over and yanked the frame off the table before I could stop her. I stood there stunned. That's his real smile, I said quietly. Not one for the camera, one for me. Melissa rolled her eyes and replaced it with the new photo, one she had edited from a blurry phone snapshot taken years ago at a wedding. Henry's face looked wrong. The lighting was all wrong. His expression was stiff, eyes overly whitened.
He hated this tie, I said, looking at it. Yeah, well, it matches the decor, Melissa replied. David walked in then, holding a plate of hors d'oeuvres. He looked from me to Melissa and sighed like he had walked into someone else's mess. David, I said, can we please use the photo your father actually liked? He did not meet my eyes. Melissa crossed her arms. She is doing it again, David, turning this into a funeral. It is supposed to be a remembrance, not a seance. I stepped back and picked up the original photo from where she had set it on the floor. I was his wife for 38 years, I said. I knew his face. I knew his heart. You know what I know? David said suddenly, loud enough to silence the whole room. I know that Dad is dead, and you need to stop clinging to the past like it is going to bring him back. This is why Melissa loses her mind. You are stuck, Mom, always stuck. That silence afterward, that's what I remember most. Even the music in the background seemed to dim. I looked at my son, and for a second, I saw him as a boy again, hiding behind my skirt when he was afraid. And then I saw him now, grown, distant, and ashamed of the woman who had raised him. Chloe, my granddaughter, barely looked up from her phone. She mumbled to her friend, not even bothering to whisper. Grandma's acting again. And that hurt deeper than I cared to admit. I held the photo to my chest and turned away. My hands shook slightly, not from rage, but from the realization that I had already lost them long ago. All I had left was the dignity they could not recognize. I folded the small black tablecloth I had brought from the basement. I blew out the candle. I placed the old frame into the pocket of my cardigan and buttoned it closed, as if protecting a secret. I would have left without a word, but then I saw someone near the doorway. He was tall, in his 50s perhaps, dressed simply in a navy coat and jeans. I did not recognize his face at first. There had been so many children for many years. But then he stepped forward, eyes wide, voice soft. Mrs. Whitmore? I paused. You may not remember me, he said. Jake Morgan, Pine Grove Elementary. You taught me second grade. I searched his face again, and somewhere between the lines and gray at his temples, I saw him, a boy with scuffed shoes, always hungry, always late, but never without a story.
Jake, I said, you used to draw dinosaurs on your spelling tests. He laughed, eyes bright. I still do, sort of. I run a nonprofit now. We provide housing and legal support for older adults who have been displaced or mistreated. That's why I'm here tonight. Your son invited me to talk about tax write-offs for charity giving. I blinked. I wasn't expecting to see you, he continued, his voice gentler. But then I saw that photo, the one on the table, and I knew it had to be you. You're the only teacher I ever had who made me feel safe. I did not know what to say. For the first time in hours, someone was looking at me like I mattered, not as a relic, not as a nuisance, but as a person. He held up his phone, showing me a picture of my handwriting on a crumpled note. Lunch money inside. Stay warm. He had saved it. I've carried this with me for years, he said. You were the first person who gave me anything without asking for something back. Tears pricked my eyes, uninvited. He looked at me for a long moment. You okay? I nodded. No, I whispered, and he nodded too, as if he understood exactly what I meant. Behind us, laughter erupted again from the kitchen,
Melissa's voice boomed through the house as she told someone about her new skincare line. Jake touched my elbow lightly. "Can I get you a ride home?" I looked at the family I had built, then at the man I had once given a sandwich and a scarf to. "No," I said, "but maybe you can help me find a way out." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "I know a place," he said, "and I think you'd fit in just fine." The snow had just begun to fall, soft and quiet, like the kind of forgiveness that comes too late. I stood in the basement, watching flakes gather on the tiny window pane, no bigger than a bathroom mirror. It was nearly midnight. The house above me buzzed with leftover laughter, music, the hum of dishes being rinsed. No one noticed I was gone. No one asked, "Where's Mom?" or "Where's Grandma?" No one cared enough to knock. I opened the closet, one they had let me use but never let me call mine. Inside hung 2 coats, both too old to be stylish, one too thin for the winter. I chose the thicker one and folded it into my suitcase, the same suitcase I had brought with me when I moved in 10 years ago. I had not touched it since Henry's funeral. I moved slowly, but with certainty. A pair of shoes, 3 sweaters, 2 pairs of slacks, a knit cap, my small Bible worn at the edges, my glasses, my insulin pens, the scarf I made last winter but never wore, the gray one with the loose edge and the initials RW stitched so faintly no one would notice unless they were looking for something real. I opened the drawer beside my bed and pulled out Henry's leather-bound notebook. He had started writing in it when the doctors told us the treatments would stop. "I want to leave you something no one can take," he said. And he had words, memories, maps of who we were before silence moved in. I tucked it gently between the sweaters. Then I sat down at the small writing desk, an old TV tray really, and took out a single sheet of lined paper. I wrote, "David, Melissa, I will no longer be in the way. I will not make you pretend anymore. But one day, when you are older than you are now, I hope you understand what it costs to push away someone who only ever wanted to belong. I will not trouble you again. But remember, home is not just a roof. It is where someone asks if you are warm enough. It is where your silence is heard anyway. Mom." I folded the note and placed it on the kitchen counter right next to the espresso machine I was never allowed to use. I stood there a moment watching the house from the bottom up, hearing the muted shuffle of their lives moving forward without me. Then I took one last look at the place I had cleaned, cooked in, cried in, and been erased inside. I left the cinnamon rolls untouched in the fridge. Maybe Chloe would eat one. Maybe not. I ordered a cab to the airport. The driver was young and polite. He did not ask why an old woman was leaving a suburban house at 1 a.m. with just a suitcase and a purse. At the airport, everything was too bright, too awake. I booked the first available morning flight to Portland, Maine, one way. At the gate, I sat near the window, watching as the sky turned from deep blue to a thin gray veil. I saw couples holding hands, teenagers with headphones, parents trying to keep toddlers still. I was invisible among them, and for once it did not hurt. I reached into my bag and pulled out Henry's notebook. On the first page, he had written, "If they forget who you are, Ruth, you remember."
I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it had finally become true. As the plane boarded, I walked down the jet bridge slowly. My knees ached, but my spine was straighter than it had been in years. I took my seat by the window. As the engines rumbled and the plane lifted into the air, I heard a faint, distant melody from the chapel below the terminal. The bells were playing Silent Night. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the stillness in that song. Not sadness, just stillness, just peace. The flight was quiet. I watched clouds pass beneath us like waves that had forgotten where they were going. I simply stared out the window as clouds passed beneath us like waves that had forgotten where they were going.
And somewhere between New Jersey and Maine, I found myself thinking of a boy I had not seen in 15 years, a boy I never meant to love, but could never forget. He was 12, maybe 13. No one knew for sure because no one asked, and he never offered. We called him Jake, though I doubt that was his real name. He had a way of disappearing during roll call and reappearing when it was time to run. Always dirty, always hungry. He wore the same hoodie every day, gray, with a missing zipper and jeans held together by safety pins and hope. The school said he was a problem. The principal called him a distraction, but I saw something different. It started with a sandwich. I had packed 2 that day, one for me and one I claimed was for a mistake in portioning. I gave it to him during recess, pretending it was nothing. He did not thank me. He just ate like someone who did not know if there would be another meal. After that, I noticed him watching the dumpsters behind the cafeteria when the day ended. Once, I followed from a distance. I saw him slip into the back of an abandoned sanitation truck parked beside the maintenance shed. I stood in the cold for almost 15 minutes before I realized he was not waiting for a ride, he was going home. Inside that rusted truck was a nest of old blankets, plastic bags, and an empty water jug. They even warmed it with whatever they could find. I did not confront him. I did not tell the school. I just began leaving things. A thermos of soup, a pair of gloves, a small flashlight, antibiotic cream. I hid them behind the back tire every afternoon before heading home. He never spoke about it, never acknowledged it, but I knew he found them. Once he came to class wearing a thick green scarf. I had knitted it the night before. It was the first time I saw him smile. Not wide, not for show, just a tiny curl of the lips that said, "I see you." Then winter deepened and I got sick. It started with a cough, then a fever. I refused to take time off. I had too many kids who needed someone steady, someone kind. But one night, as I was grading papers, the room tilted. My heart pounded unevenly. My breath grew short. I remember stumbling toward the phone but collapsing halfway, and then darkness. When I woke up in the hospital, there were machines everywhere, tubes in places I did not understand, and a nurse telling me I had been lucky, that someone had called 911 just in time. "Do you know who?" I asked. She shook her head. No name. He was gone when the paramedics arrived, but he stayed long enough to make sure they came. When I returned home days later, I went back to the sanitation truck. It was completely empty. Not a blanket, not a wrapper, not even the scarf. All that remained was a torn piece of notebook paper folded and wedged into the space where I used to leave the thermos. It said in sharp pencil strokes, "Thank you, Mrs. W. I'll be someone good one day." There was a leather bracelet tied around it, the kind you might find at a gas station. Etched into the band, almost worn smooth, were the letters and numbers. J04. I kept them both. The paper was in my Bible now, tucked between Psalms and Proverbs. The bracelet I wore on my wrist when I needed courage, like when Melissa first made me move to the basement, like the day she banned me from reading bedtime stories. I often wondered what became of him, where he went, if he ever became someone good. But as the plane descended into Portland, I realized something else. Maybe it was not about what he became. Maybe it was about the fact that someone I barely knew had saved my life simply because I had not ignored his. That in the ugliest moment of my body failing me, it was not family, not friends, not God that answered first. It was a boy who had nothing, giving everything. The tires touched down with a gentle thud. I reached into my bag and felt for the bracelet. Still there, still warm, still mine, and maybe, just maybe, not done yet. The building was modest brick and clean.
with wide glass windows and a banner that read Elder Voices of Maine, Annual Advocacy Gathering. I had not planned to attend. I had only wandered the downtown streets of Portland, letting memory guide my steps. But when I saw that title, something in my chest told me, go inside, sit down, listen. So I did. The auditorium was warm, not just in temperature, but in tone. People clapped gently. Some cried. Some held hands. I found a spot in the back corner where no one would notice me. I had gotten good at that, being present but invisible. Then the next speaker stepped up to the stage, a tall man, lean, dark coat over a gray sweater. His name was printed in bold on the program I had barely glanced at. Jake Morgan, founder, Haven Foundation for Elder Support and Housing. Jake Morgan. He began to speak, not with rehearsed pride, but with quiet conviction. When I was a child, he said, I lived in places most people would not call homes, abandoned trucks, storage units, park bathrooms. But one winter I met someone who didn't ask why I was dirty or what I had done wrong. She just left soup, gloves, a scarf, no words, just kindness. He paused. I never got to thank her, but she saved my life. My breath caught in my chest. I did not move. I did not blink. I just watched him, frozen in time. Jake continued speaking about legislation, support services, shelters, but his voice had become an echo behind the pounding in my ears. When the session ended, people clapped. I stood slowly, hoping to leave before anyone noticed. But before I reached the door, he was there. "Excuse me, ma'am." I turned. His eyes widened. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." He stepped closer. "Mrs. Whitmore?" I nodded. "Jake!" He stared like he was seeing a ghost. Then without a word, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a worn brown leather wallet, and unfolded a piece of fabric from it. A small square of knitted gray wool, frayed at the edges with tiny letters stitched near the hem. R.W. I gasped. "You kept it," I said. He smiled. "It kept me." The tears came before I could stop them. He reached out and embraced me tightly with both arms, like someone who finally found home after being lost for too long. I clung to him. Neither of us said much. The snow had begun falling again, soft and slow, dusting his coat and my shoulders. When we pulled apart, he wiped his face and said, "I have been looking for you for years." I thought maybe you'd passed on, or that I'd imagined you. "No," I said. "I'm real, just tired." He nodded. "If not for you," he said, "I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't have built any of this. You were the first person who ever saw me without judgment." We sat on a bench just outside the building. He handed me a cup of tea from a vending cart and asked where I had been all these years. I told him. Not every detail, not every insult, but enough. Enough for him to close his eyes and shake his head. "I know you don't want pity," he said, "but you deserve more than what they gave you." "I don't want revenge," I said softly. "Just peace. A place to be human again." Jake looked up. "I know somewhere," he said. "We have a small cottage on the edge of our community. Quiet, safe, yours if you want it." I looked at him. A man who had slept under dumpsters now offering me shelter, not out of pity, but out of grace. "I want it," I whispered. He smiled. "And more than that," he said, "I want people to hear your story, not so they feel bad, but so they understand what it costs to silence someone who only gave love." I nodded. "For so long," I said, "I thought my life was over, but maybe I just needed to be remembered by someone who still knew my name." And Jake smiled again. "I never forgot it, Mrs. Whitmore."
And that night, for the first time in years, I did not sleep in someone else's basement. I slept in a house where someone wanted me to be. Jake did not waste time. Within 2 weeks of settling me into the cottage, he sat me down at his office, placed a recorder gently on the table, and said, "Only if you're ready, Mrs. Whitmore. This story matters." I nodded. I had spent too many years being quiet. It was time. We spent hours going through everything: my handwritten notes, Henry's journal, photos of the house when I first moved in, receipts for groceries I had paid for, even the loan documents Melissa had tried to get me to co-sign. Jake photographed everything with the precision of someone who had once had everything to lose and now worked to protect those who still did. He titled the piece, "Thrown Out for Living Too Long: The Story of Ruth Whitmore." The opening line read, "At 72, Ruth Whitmore was told by her daughter-in-law to get out. Her son stayed silent. Her crime was existing where she was no longer wanted."
The article was posted on the Haven Foundation's website and shared on social media. Within hours, it spread across Portland. By morning, it was on every major news outlet in Maine. By the end of the week, national headlines picked it up. Mother evicted by family finds purpose through strangers she once saved. The comments flooded in, thousands of strangers writing to say they believed me, that they had seen it happen to their own mothers or grandmothers. Women from every corner of the country sent letters. Some told stories. Some sent handmade quilts, scarves, books. One woman wrote, "Your strength gave me courage to leave my own daughter's house." But the real thunder came when Age Free, the anti-aging skincare brand Melissa had recently signed a major contract with, released a public statement. "We condemn all forms of ageism, both institutional and personal. Effective immediately, we are terminating our partnership with Melissa Whitmore due to violations of our core values." Melissa tried to deny everything, claimed I had made it all up, said I was mentally unstable and vindictive, but Jake had provided indisputable evidence: voicemails, messages, emails she thought no one would ever see again. Then came the investigation. Apparently, David had been quietly funneling money through the house's equity, using my name as a dependent to qualify for certain tax deductions. He had assumed, perhaps, that I would never notice, or worse, that I would die before anyone asked. The IRS did, and they asked loudly. In the span of 3 months, they lost everything: their brand contracts, their social standing, their home. Melissa's face was removed from every billboard. David's name was flagged on multiple tax reports. Chloe was pulled out of private school. No one wanted their names attached to a family that had publicly discarded their own mother. People they once invited to dinners stopped answering their calls. Melissa's mother tried to defend her, and in doing so, got dragged into public scorn. And as all of that unraveled, I stayed silent. I stayed warm in a cottage filled with peace, but I did not stay idle. Jake and I sat down with a team of donors and volunteers and launched Sunlight Haven, a foundation that would provide transitional housing, therapy, and legal assistance to women over 60 who had been discarded by their families. We used the momentum of my story, the donations pouring in, and yes, some of the public shame David and Melissa could no longer escape, to purchase the house I had once been forced to live in like a ghost, the very same house. When the foreclosure notice came, we moved quickly. It was poetic in
A way that Henry would have smiled at. I walked back into that house, not as a mother begging for space, but as the founder of a refuge. We turned the master bedroom into a counseling center and filled the rooms with quilts, shared cups of tea, and women who once were told they didn't belong. We kept the kitchen, but this time, everyone got to cook. We added a small plaque to the front door. It read, "This is not a place to live. This is a place to be welcomed, in honor of those who stayed silent too long." The press came again, but I did not give interviews anymore. I had said what I needed to say. The last message I sent was through a handwritten letter mailed without a return address. It was addressed to Chloe. It said, "When you are older and you wonder if it was all true, remember this. Your grandmother never left you. She was sent away, but she waited. If you ever knock on this door, you will still be welcome. Not because you are family, but because you are human." We framed a copy of that letter in the front room of Sunlight Haven, just above the fireplace. People ask me if I feel vindicated. I tell them, I feel useful. That is more than enough. A year had passed. The snow had returned to Portland, blanketing rooftops and telephone wires in gentle white. But this winter felt different. Not because it was warmer or colder, but because I felt whole. I stood on the stage at the main state conference center, looking out at rows of chairs filled with lawmakers, social workers, teachers, and strangers who had once read my name in headlines. Some nodded, some cried, but all of them listened. I adjusted the microphone, took a breath, and spoke. Forgiveness, I said, doesn't mean giving people the chance to do it again. It just means you stop letting them touch your self-worth. They already took your time. Don't give them your dignity. The room was silent, not out of discomfort, but respect. A silence I had once known as a punishment was now a form of reverence. I left the podium quietly and returned to my seat. After the event, I lingered in the hallway, accepting hugs from a few kind women and handshakes from men who said, "You reminded me of my mother." I thanked them. I meant it. Then, near the back wall, I saw her. Chloe. She was taller now, 14, going on 20, with long hair and a downcast expression. She clutched a notebook to her chest like armor. "Grandma," she said, voice trembling. I turned. "I'm sorry," she said, "for what I said, for what I didn't say. I was following my mom. I didn't know how to think for myself." I looked at her face, still young, still forming, and second, I saw the child I used to read stories to before Melissa locked the bedroom door. "I know," I said softly. She swallowed hard. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No, but if you want to make it right, then don't grow into someone who forgets people's worth." Chloe's eyes welled up. "I want to learn to be better." I touched her shoulder. "Then do the thing your mother never could. Relearn. Kindness." She nodded, lips tight, and hugged me quickly before disappearing into the crowd. I watched her go, not with bitterness, but with hope. Maybe the wound left a scar, but maybe the scar would teach her compassion. That night I returned to Sunlight Haven. Our refuge had grown. Now 3 homes, a garden, a shared kitchen where women who once lived in silence now told stories over lentil soup and homemade bread. The walls were filled with photographs, not of what we lost, but what we reclaimed. I sat in my usual chair near the window. It overlooked the east yard where the sun hit first in the morning. I was knitting a new scarf, gray with deep purple trim, the kind I would have given to a boy named Jake long ago. A small voice rang out from the hallway. "Grandma Ruth, I want to learn to knit like you." It was Lily, an 8 years old, whose mother had arrived just 3 months ago, fleeing her own silence. I smiled. "Well then," I called back, "bring your hands and your patience." Her laughter echoed up the stairs, warm and high. I looked out the window again. Snow began to fall, soft and slow, like the kind of peace you earn, not find. Outside, the sign at the front gate caught the light of the porch lamp. Its words, etched in bronze, read, "For those who were told to leave but never lost their dignity." And beneath it, smaller letters added just last month. Founded by Ruth Whitmore, who remembered what others forgot. I no longer wanted a headline. I had something better. A name and a place where it finally meant something. And so Ruth Whitmore found what many spend a lifetime searching for. Not revenge, not applause, but quiet purpose. A place where her name wasn't just remembered but respected. Where stories weren't erased but passed on like heirlooms. If her journey moved you, if it reminded you of someone who gave everything and asked for nothing, then don't let her voice fade. Subscribe to Whispers of Grandma, like and comment to hear more stories that deserve to be remembered. Because sometimes the ones the world forgets are the ones who hold it.